What does it mean when your governance, your law enforcement system, your leaders are embedding a system of surveillance and they have not told the people that will be affected by it about it? What does it mean when somebody creates an app that's going to be used by people that can harm and endanger people's real lives in a permanent record, and they do so privately on their own without telling anybody that their lives can be affected by this, meaning that they can literally entrap somebody, set them up, entrap them on video, entrap them on audio or some other form of electronic technology, and then hold it against their future based upon something that they had no awareness of. It is being reported today that more and more cameras are being put into public parks. And to be perfectly honest with you, they had already been doing that. They had already been secretly investing and installing hidden cameras in the first place. There has been all kinds of covert, unlawful surveillance the whole time. There have always been cameras that have been hidden in plain view by the same system that claims it's supposed to be protecting public safety. When it reaches the point where these people believe that they can take away public privacy to the degree that people have nowhere they can go or nothing they can do without being under somebody's watch, when you have a reasonable expectation of privacy and sanctity, what does that mean? See, we failed to enforce adequate laws that will protect public privacy and public sanctity. Your privacy is part of your personal liberty. Your privacy is part of what makes you a human being. And the citizens were not the ones that caused the war. The citizens were not the ones that caused terrorism. Yet the system is punishing the citizen population more and more progressively because of things that those who were supposed to serve, protect, and represent us were supposed to protect as our rights and our liberties. So you're telling us that the more and more we keep spending year after year for you to claim that you're protecting public safety, yet crime not only continues but often increases, and nobody is supposed to ask any questions about the legitimacy of it, something's wrong. So my question is, who's watching the watchers? Who's watching the police? Who's watching the government? Because obviously we wouldn't be in this position where our rights and liberties as citizens, as professionals, as members of governance and law enforcement or whomever else wouldn't be in that position if not for some type of failure or oversight by those who were supposed to protect us. It reaches the point where the system is in more danger by people who threaten our safety and security than they're supposed to be. Who's actually protecting us? If the cameras and the technology are actually doing all the work, let me ask you a question. What are the actual people who are supposed to be boots on the ground doing the work doing? Just sitting down watching TV, watching monitors, listening to audio? What does this mean for us? Now, one of the recent topics in this particular area has been about convicting people with no evidence, which also means that people have been trying to figure out how to commit crime and get away with things like murder and other forms of harm and have no evidence. Well, how would something like that be possible? Because there's always got to be some evidence in some kind of way. But with artificial intelligence, with robots, with devices, you can program things that are non-human to carry out acts that affect real human life. And there will be no evidence present because a human being didn't do it. And people don't understand the seriousness of these issues. The next thing they're going to be talking about doing, which they're already doing and which they've already done without some people realizing it, is putting chips in human beings. The same things that they do when they put chips in animals, tracking devices, GPS devices. So think about what it would mean, and I don't want to be too far-fetched and scare you, but think about what it would mean if somebody said, all right, if you want to marry me, or if I want to marry you, we have to put chips in one another so that we can track one another. And I'm only doing that because I'm trying to protect my wife. I'm only doing that because I'm trying to protect my daughter. Aren't you supposed to be able to choose where you want to go and what you want to do when you want to be private? And what is the contradiction? What is the conflict when it comes to you trying to have your personal privacy and your sanctity versus your need for personal safety and public safety while you engage in your privacy? So what I'm saying to you is that I'm watching people literally organizing, orchestrating, sometimes a whole community organizing ways to cause a tragedy, to cause a kind of harm, to create the alarm, to make people believe that they are threatened in such a way that we need to give up our liberty to them so that they can protect us. But we're finding out that they're not really protecting us. They're not really doing anything for us at that level. As a matter of fact, a lot of people still might not get service at all. What happens when you've invested all of this money and this time and our liberty has been stolen and they refuse to protect certain people? So who's getting protection and who isn't? We're paying for the security of certain people that won't give us the same type of security for our own lives. Okay, now I don't want to go too far off of what we talked about in terms of the public surveillance in parks. Some people are saying, well, that's a good thing because, well, a lot of people are out there. A lot of people are vulnerable at parks. And that's a legitimate concern. Because if you got a park filled with people and somebody commits some act that endangers a lot of people's lives, the police department can get in trouble for that. There's no question about that. We understand that because a lot of people have been plotting ways to get as many people injured as they can when they engage in certain kinds of acts. But most of the time, nothing like that is going to happen. We should not be walking around in paranoia under false alarm that we are always endangered in that kind of way just because we want to go to the park, just because we want to spend some private time with somebody. So now everything that you do that makes you human, that makes you free, that gives you peace of mind, they're putting something in there that's a political tether to make you think that you're endangered at all times by all people, where things that are actually very human are not even being treated as human. And so what does it mean when something about what's being done is stealing more and more of your humanity? And I have been talking about this for some time, about how the government was stealing our humanity. Do you realize how much money is spent for federal spending that never actually makes it to the actual people? So they're getting the freedom, they're getting the privacy, they're getting a gate to protect them and their families, but the actual people have to lose their liberty to be protected. So you're telling me that the government, the military, the law enforcement system, and the press are supposed to be having all Americans and all people around the world under constant voyeuristic surveillance. Yet, if the public turns their camera and their devices on the press, on the military, on the government, on the police, and surveils them in a voyeuristic way to make a permanent record, because a video document is a permanent record, an audio document is a permanent record. And we can see what happened to Donald Trump, where something that happened years ago when he was in the private sanctity of a bus with somebody else and they entrapped some language or some subject or conversation that he had with one of the members of the Bush family, and they used that to publicly demonize and humiliate him, to harm him. They didn't do that because they were protecting public safety. They didn't do that because they were trying to make sure everybody was going to be secure and accounted for. They did that to harm him. And he needs to take a look and a listen at how serious this is. Okay, let's go get the top anchors in the news and the press. Tether their lives with video cameras everywhere they go. Put hidden cameras in their house. They have people that have cameras hidden in people's bedrooms. So you're making love to your wife. You're making love with your girlfriend. You're engaging in whatever it is that you plan to do privately. And they're documenting you. Now, what does it mean if somebody uses this same video system for what amounts to public entrapment? They're always going to send those little girls and those women out there to entrap somebody so you can catch them on camera looking at somebody or doing something to somebody. What does this really mean? Now, let me tell you why this particular program is so important. What does it mean if a child is born, or it's a young person who does not even have enough age on them to determine what they value as their sanctity and their privacy, and somebody has already taken that liberty from them? It's a form of social rape. Okay? And women and girls need to listen to me very carefully here. See, it's not about what the benefit is when it's used properly. It's about what this means if these devices and this electronic information is being used wrongly to harm. Because there are always going to be people in law enforcement, in government, in military, and everywhere else who use this technology for harm. Some of the people who help coordinate the greatest terrorism are the people who know where the vulnerabilities are in safety. So if you have dash cameras, you've got body cameras, you've got cameras all over the place. You've got personal cameras. You've got all of these safety devices and mechanisms and tools, and you still can't curb crime. Something is going on. Something is not working. Something is not effective. Because if you got all of that at your disposal and you still haven't been able to figure out how to solve crime, something is going on. And so how do you have time to use those technologies to surveil, harass, and intercept other people's lives who may not have done anything, misusing that technology? How do you justify that when there's supposedly real crime going on? So why was the public not given an opportunity to have some awareness about these issues and how their lives would be impacted by it and what their input would be? Do we really need to encourage people that they are threatened and endangered at all times to create that type of public hysteria and paranoia? This stuff is designed in part to create class separation driven by technology. To use certain kinds of footage and surveillance technology to capture specific kinds of issues in history that they want to use at a future point to keep the classes separated and divided socioeconomically, racially, by gender, by sexuality, and more. What if somebody has a private venue where they don't necessarily want anybody to know about certain aspects of their lives, and you're sitting there with a camera mounted on it, using that footage to expose things that people didn't really want to be known in that kind of way? I think they're making a desperate attempt to get this stuff installed and in motion before the public can have an opportunity to say or do anything about it, because they're trying to steal the future. Because the way to steal the future is to hold the past against somebody's future. And the only people that aren't vulnerable are the people who they don't really know anything about, or the people who haven't really committed any crime. And that is why I have argued so much and so often about the injustice, including this mugshot system that they have, where they're literally forcing people's name and life identity into an electronic criminalization system for later use. So think about what it means if they've already pre-collected your DNA, pre-collected your mugshot, pre-collected images of you on footage in the places that you come and go, and built a database and a profile against your life as a completely innocent person so that they can run you into something in the future that they can use all of that to hold against you before it ever happens, because they want specific things to happen at specific times in history. And so what we're finding out is that the people that are supposed to be protecting us might be engaging in criminal activity themselves. The people who are supposed to be protecting us might be the ones that are stealing our liberty most. Who's watching the watchers? Who's surveilling them? Who are they accountable to? They're accountable to us. I hope this is giving you much to consider, because this is very serious. A lot of people hide behind technology to get away with things that impact real life. Imagine and just think about what it means when they take away your human socialization, your human interaction, your nature, and turn it into something cyber electronic where they divide you from your humanity and the things that make you a human being. That's what this includes. And you may have your fun for a while before you realize the residual consequence of all of this and say, well, I don't care about the camera. It doesn't matter. I feel more safe. That's what you think until something goes wrong and you can never retrieve your freedom and you can never retrieve your nature again after it's been stolen. And you should always give the people an opportunity to have some input on the things that impact their real quality of life. And so when you're talking about what it means for immigration, when you're talking about what it means for undocumented people, this stuff is serious. This stuff is serious because in some instances, this technology might be the only thing that helps you capture these people if nobody knows who they are, so you can see who the physical person is. Okay, but then what happens when somebody puts on a disguise? What happens when somebody puts on something that looks like a real person and it's not a real person? What happens when it's a robot or some type of mannequin or some type of other, non-human representation that's made to look human, like a sculpture or something? How will we know the difference between the living and the dead without real physical interaction? You're not supposed to just count on picture images. What I'm trying to tell you is that a picture can lie. They can entrap people. They can make video and still images lie. And how do you know if the person isn't available, or if the person is dead, or if the person is injured, or if the person has no awareness of how their image has been used electronically? This stuff is dangerous, and it's dangerous on both sides. At the same time, there's a benefit in terms of what is alleged to be safety. We know what that is. But the consequence in how it endangers us, making us be falsely alarmed in these kinds of ways, is very awful. And so we noticed that Randy Robertson here, who is the head of the FOP of the state of Georgia, is talking about running for office. And he's one of the main people that anchored into this stuff early on to put it into motion before people would ever have any awareness of it or that they could do anything about it. And that was why I documented this. See, we are a system of public ethics. We are a system of law. These people are supposed to do things that are in the best interest of the public at large. And I know for certain that this has more to do with something other than just public safety. This is about trying to keep people from having the freedom to engage in the things that they want to engage in privately and secretly. To entrap you into your home. To entice you into places where they can trap you. And not only trap you, but embarrass you and blackmail you and bribe you. And that's what they're not telling. And for the safety component of it, we need to be supportive of everything that will protect us in terms of safety. But as we can see, the misuse of this technology far outweighs the dangers of technological misuse. I got lucky And I don't want to say I got lucky because I actually worked for it. I didn't go do a bunch of stuff in my life where I have to be worried about being embarrassed and being caught and being outed and all of this kind of stuff. I just didn't do that in my life. I didn't want that in my life because I didn't want to live with shame. I didn't want to live with regret and guilt. And some of these people think they have done so much and have so much, but that camera can tell something else about them that they may never have wanted known. So they're taking this camera and pointing it at specific kinds of people in specific kinds of places to divide public attention from where that camera actually needs to be pointing. So why didn't they take the same cameras and point it at the mayor's house? Why didn't they take the same cameras and follow her around and follow the police chief and follow the director of Homeland Security and follow the district attorney and all the judges? So they're saying that they're getting some rights that the people aren't getting, yet they work for the people. Something about this has been handled fundamentally wrong in the infrastructure. And if the infrastructure is wrong from the start, you better believe we're going to have to come back and visit these same issues again in the future when people realize not just the benefit of what their claims are, but the consequences. This is the Thought Line. I'm your host, Reggie Radney, and I've got information for you.